Hey guys, Yinzer here. This week we're going to run a little bit of a recap, and the Friday episode is going to be more of a preview and going over Thursday night's game. So that's how it's going to go going forward. First game we're going to showcase. Not going to talk about all the games this weekend because some of them were a snooze fest, but going to talk about some of the main ones and the ones that we felt were important. Pittsburgh versus Cincinnati. Once again, roller coaster ride. Always, always, always. I love these matchups, but I also hate them.
Just wouldn't have it any other way, man. It's AFC North ball, as Coach Tomlin likes to say. We know what we're getting into.
Yeah, we sure do, and so do the fans. My palpitations seem to come up every week that we decide to play these divisional games. We'll come up after the bye week, even when we're playing the Browns here.
Yeah, we
You
got
saw what
what
happened that first week.
two more straight weeks of it. Them and the Ravens after. The Ravens will be a bit harder than the Browns, but we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, especially with their defense. So we shall see. I guess just diving straight on in. Ben, Ben. That last drive, Mister Field Surgeon. He just methodically drove that ball down the field, and he got AB the ball, who he needs to get to the ball, that last minute. So, or I'm sorry, it was what 15 seconds I think when he caught it.
Yeah, at that
So
point, yeah. Yep.
yep, he caught it last 15 seconds and just walked that on in. It was just Bengals going all out blitz, hoping that they could get to Ben before he gets to somebody else. It just didn't work for them. They should know better than to leave absolutely no safeties back for AB, but once again they did. Also earlier in that drive, Drake Kirkpatrick, a holding penalty, not a huge yardage wise penalty, but huge momentum wise. Two straight incomplete passes to start the drive, and then we get the holding penalty, and momentum completely flips. Ben remains calm, and it just continues on from there, and they get the win in the last 10 seconds there.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue at that point the Bengals kind of bangled it. We were during that penalty? It would have been third down, reset on downs, next pass, Juju into field goal range. Right after that, AB into the end zone. So the Bengals essentially did what they do best, and they choked.
Yep, Ben is 14-2 at home over at Paul Brown Stadium. So if you want to put that into perspective, I don't think any quarterback should be that dominant anywhere. But I think going into that last drive, he knew that. He knows he wins there. They know he wins there. And they did what they do best towards the end. Just kind of cost themselves the game. I think that the penalty was definitely crucial there. I think even if the penalty hadn't happened, maybe we get a field goal out of that, but for sure not a touchdown. And I feel like it takes it definitely down to the last 3 seconds there. So I think they definitely caused a loss for themselves. Bunch of stuff, interviews after the game, talking about that they're the more talented team and this and that. I feel like their attitudes going forward, the Bengals, towards playing the Steelers and stuff are kind of just, they go in talking all this trash, talking, oh, we're going to win this game, blah, blah, blah. And then Pittsburgh just actually does, in regards to it. I feel like since he doesn't do the actual action, they just do a bunch of trash talking, and then look what happens.
Yeah, I think at this point in time, they've lost, if I'm looking at this correct, 6 games in a row, the Bengals have. And they continue to talk all this trash. It feels as though Marvin Lewis maybe should step in and be like, shut up and just play ball. Go out there and win the damn game. Then you can talk shit. But they seem to refuse to do that. It's gotten a little bit lighter in recent years, but it's definitely still there. You can't say you're the better team when you go out there and lose. So it was Kirkpatrick that said that, correct?
Correct. Kirkpatrick decided that he he wanted to badmouth the Steelers once again, even after the fact and stuff. He was doing it before the game and did it after the game, as per usual. Kirkpatrick, perfect. They're kind of the two main guys that like to do that. So I don't know what needs to be changed in Cincinnati, but I think Marvin Lewis definitely needs to say something to him. Despite he does seem to like having Perfect out there and having all those issues out on the field. I feel he thinks Perfect's talent outweighs the penalties and stuff that he gives the team, which I can't really necessarily agree with. But he's an NFL coach, and I'm not.
I mean, and on the topic of Burfict, he was honestly relatively quiet. If I'm not mistaken, I don't believe any penalties were called against him this week. Granted, there could have been a few calls going against Cincinnati because of him, but he was relatively quiet, and the Steelers, I feel, did a pretty good job of eliminating him from the game, even though he tried very hard to make his presence felt. Especially more than anything, there's 3 hits that stand out. We can talk about the main one being the blatant elbow to Antonio Brown, which to this point, there's still no new news on that, no fine, no suspension, nothing like that, and there wasn't even a call on the field, which I find to be completely ludicrous. If they want this stuff to stop with him, he either needs to be suspended, because a fine just isn't going to do it. Where are they going to fine him? I know there's a cap on it, but probably like 20 grand they'd fine him, maybe a little bit more at this point because he's a repeat offender.
I think actually in total he's been fined anywhere from 700,000 to $1 million through all his rough hits and all that stuff. So yeah, like you said, I don't think putting a fine on him is going to teach him any lessons. Seeing that we're this deep in and nothing's changing. I think his suspension needs to be in order if this kind of stuff continues with him, which obviously it's going to.
It's really a wonder with how on top the NFL is of head injuries and even just protecting a QB. Look at last week, TJ Watt. He wraps up Matt Ryan's legs and he gets fined. You have clear video evidence of an elbow, like just swinging with the elbow into someone's helmet, and nothing at all is going to be done. That's why this guy hasn't learned a lesson. Suspend him the rest of the season, see if he comes back and does the same thing. If he does it again, he's out of the league. Really, I think he should be out of the league at this point. But I would take what they got 10 games left. I'd take 10 games at this point. Get the point across and get him the hell out of there. So, and it's going to reach a point where somebody is really going to get hurt. Somebody's not going to get up because of one of his hits for good, and at that point they'll do something when it's too late. It's ridiculous. I could go on a rant about it, but he just needs to be out of the league. Bottom line.
I think anybody from good. I don't foresee the suspension as tall as you're calling for or whatever. Even I feel 4 or 5 games would hopefully do the trick, but who knows with Burfict. I mean, fines haven't gotten through to him with the staggering amount that he has, so we'll see if a suspension, but obviously nothing's going to come of this. It seems like a bunch of this stuff is elevated too when they play the Steelers. Doesn't seem like this kind of behavior comes out in him so much in games that aren't with the Steelers or like any division rivals. So I don't know if they need to look at it when they're playing each other and be more focused on that or what, but I just feel something definitely needs to change.
Yeah, absolutely. It would be nice if that actually happened. But moving on from Burfict, because we can't complain too much. We did get the win, even though he was a bit of a distraction. Ben and AB, what do you make of them, man? I know they're putting up the numbers, but I think them putting up the late game big numbers is keeping things somewhat silent, but it's still a bit of a concern to mine. This early game stuff where they're not connecting. The long ball is not working at all. Even medium range. The medium range stuff doesn't seem to be clicking too well. Do you think we need to be concerned about this? Do you think it's going to improve?
I feel like only time will tell. In these early weeks, obviously Ben and you have not really connected, or as AB likes to say, they have bad Wi-Fi. They always do stay connected, like he says. There's no bad blood between them, but I do just feel like there's something going on there. I don't know whether it seems to be a lot of the time that Ben is just overthrowing, and we're not used to it because we haven't really seen it in previous years. But I also do think a lot more teams are double covering AB now, mm-hmm. And since Ben has more options available to him, as in McDonald, James, Juju, and Washington, I feel now that he has more options. Juju is beating most of the cornerbacks in the league. Off his routes and stuff. I mean, he had 7 receptions for 111 yards this week, with a couple wonderful catches. I feel Ben's not pushing it in like last year. He'd be pushing it more because he didn't really know how to feel with Juju and stuff. They were still kind of getting a feel for each other, but he would push those throws and throw into double coverage and cost himself interceptions and stuff like that. I mean, he had 5 interception game last year. Haven't really seen that for him this year so much. I mean, he hasn't been as dominant as years past. He's leading the league in passing yards, which still astounds me. But I just feel as if he's not forcing things as much as before. The numbers might be there. I mean, these aren't wonderful AB numbers, but these are good numbers for, I mean, any great receiver. But like you said, it's not AB numbers. I mean, look at a couple of his stat lines last year, 12 catches, over 170 yards, 2 touchdowns. We're talking on multiple occasions, AB having over 150 yards. We're not seeing that this year, and I think it's just because of the more options available to Ben. We have McDonald healthy for once. Smith-Schuster, he's finally just kind of figuring out the chemistry between them, and Washington, who we picked up in the draft, is actually running routes well and doing what Ben needs to do. And he's a taller receiver, so he's able to, kind of go up there and go get the ball.
Well, yeah, on the topic of Ben real quick, and like you're talking about him not forcing the ball as much, we've seen him do it a couple times this year, and it's cost him. So he is being more cautious, but when he's done it, he's paid for it. And with, like you were saying, with AB being double covered, that's a big attribute to him not getting big numbers, especially early on in games. But I guess the one positive from them not connecting early, at least, is when they do connect, AB is making the most of it with the catch and run, especially like we saw on Sunday there to end the game. So until he starts not putting up any numbers whatsoever, I don't think we need to be concerned. But I would definitely like to see them get some momentum going early on in the game rather than just the second half. But we'll have to see what happens.
Yeah, I totally agree. I feel maybe as we get going with the season a little bit more, these numbers will pick up and stuff. But like I said, I just feel he's not forcing things like he needs to be. I mean, obviously AB can make the plays, but he's more worried about turning the ball over and stuff like that. If he has other options available, he's going to go to them. You see him a lot these weeks, kind of spanning the field more, looking downfield more. I mean, this game in Cincy was huge because he didn't have a single hurry, didn't have a single sack against him. The I don't know whether it was the Bengals pass rush or our offensive line, or kind of a mix of both, but just Ben was not getting pressured, so he had time to do whatever he wanted to in the pocket, to look to whoever he wanted to, and he finished the game with 369 yards and a touchdown. No turnovers, not super huge stat line for him, but I mean, almost 400 yards is pretty solid, and a touchdown to win the game. You can't really ask too much more of him.
The offensive line has looked phenomenal the past 2 weeks, especially this week more so than last. But if they keep this up, I think we're gonna be in good shape on the offensive side of the ball. Staying with that question, the topic of the week, Le'Veon Bell. It was reported today that he's not going to be showing up until next week, and I've also heard that he's talking about not coming until after the trade deadline. That way they can't trade him. I guess the question with all that is, do they need him with how James Conner is performing on the ground and through the air? What do you think?
I actually I saw a stat line this morning on Twitter, kind of just comparing the numbers between Bell and Conner, and I believe the scrimmage yards through 6 games, Conner actually has 3 more than Bell. I feel they're 2 totally different play styles. Bell just adds an extra element to the game in regards to kind of like what Conner I don't feel like has developed yet. There's obviously certain aspects where Bell is much better than Conner. I still feel like Bell is a much better pass blocker than Conner. I think too that kind of contributes to his size and stuff. Conner's doing a wonderful job so far. He's top 5 in rushing in the NFL, and Bell, like you said, is MIA Doesn't hasn't. I feel the situation in Pittsburgh wouldn't be as bad if the team knew his plans,
Yeah.
or if anybody through the organization knew his plans, instead of him kind of just keeping everybody out of the loop. I feel it kind of just creates animosity. So when he does come back, which he still talks about that he still wants to sign with Pittsburgh and all this, and he's been, a lifelong Steeler fan and stuff. I just feel somebody that wants something like that doesn't behave how he's behaving towards the organization. I understand the contract issue, but if you're not even informing anybody of your plans going forward, I feel you just kind of setting yourself up for a bad situation when you do come back. It was actually reported by a couple people saw Bell at a gas station
I heard about that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, in the South Side. Don't know if that's true. That's just a couple people confirming that on Facebook. So who knows? He might be back in Pittsburgh. He might still be in Miami. Who knows in regards to that? But in regards to the question, do the Steelers need Bell? I feel in certain aspects that he would definitely help the game, and he would bring to the table more of what is more than what Connor can bring. But I feel as of right now, as Connor's doing a pretty good job for stepping in, and obviously not having the experience and stuff that Bell does, and being able to put up great numbers with obviously behind that great offensive line, but the receiving yards and stuff, he has 100 more than Bell through the first 6 games compared to last year. So we'll see going forward if this kind of continues, but it seems like Connor's a little bit more up and down with the rushing yards as compared to Bell, who seems to have a little bit more solid rushing yard stat line. But in the first couple weeks or whatever, we would obviously trail pretty
Yeah, no,
quickly.
no chance
So
to establish a run game. We gotta look at that and think about it.
yeah, so you would kind of go more towards the pass game and stuff, and obviously that's going to reflect in the numbers. But I also think if Bell was there, that maybe that wouldn't even be the case to begin with. So, like I said, going forward, I think he's doing a great job. But I do feel there's certain aspects that Bell would do better than Connor if he was here. But I think the Steelers are pretty happy where they're at with the run game. Ridley had a pretty good game, also the couple runs that he had. So, they have a nice little tandem back there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Le'Veon Bell has that element to blow up a game. Like he can take control of a game. Connor doesn't quite have that. It's not to take anything away from him. It's just not a trait that he possesses. And by no means would the Steelers be a worse team with Le'Veon Bell. What concerns me is they're on the up and up right now. Everything's looking good, and I'm just worried he comes into that room and kind of shakes the vibe up. Possibly. I'm not saying it's going to happen. When you listen to the media, they blow things out of proportion, obviously. But I definitely think that is a factor. James has done a fantastic job, especially when they're not coming from behind, when he gets a chance to pawn the ball like he's been doing. So we'll just have to see in the coming weeks. I think if Lev Bell comes back, everybody's talking about this 1-2 punch they're going to have, and that's just not the kind of coach that Tomlin is. It's one of them is going to be a starter. I don't think Bell will be the starter to begin with, but I think they'll slowly work him in, and then we'll eventually see him take over as the starter once again, depending on where Connor is at by the time he comes back. By the time Lev Bell comes back.
Yeah, no, I definitely don't think like the people that are calling for kind of like a dual role like the Saints have or like New England does many times. I don't feel Tomlin's that kind of coach. They kind of rely heavily on one running back and substitute the other one in when they need, which is great that we have two pretty good running backs. But no, I feel one will win the starting job
I think
over
that's
the other.
really what they have to worry about, because at this point, if Connor goes down, then all you have is Ridley. Not to say that Ridley can't do a serviceable job, but it would be nice to have the two of them in there if one would go down.
Yeah, most definitely. I feel that Connor and Bell in there would be our best matchup there as compared to Connor and Ridley. But he's been doing an okay job as of right now, like I said. So going forward, we'll see when he decides to come back. I don't think he's going to be Bell's going to be the starter off the bat, but we shall see with that, I guess.
Alrighty. I guess one other thing we can cover regarding the Pitt Cincy game, then we can move on from the Homer talk. Brian Allen, is it time for him to get a shot? Because I think Artie Burns needs to get the hell out of there. What was he doing on the that drive before halftime? He was what, 10 about 10 yards or so away from Tyler Boyd in coverage. That was an absolute mess. It is the worst that I have seen from him in his time here.
Yeah, I felt like the first year that he was here, he did a pretty good job and pretty good lockdown. Once Hayden came over, he had pretty two solid cornerbacks. But I also felt like going into this year, maybe he had a little bit too much of confidence or arrogance. I don't know what it was, but felt that he could, overplay things and kind of try and be a little bit more aggressive, or felt that he had somebody covering behind him like a safety um, for routes that he's missed and stuff. But the couple plays that he like totally screwed up. Um, like the one in the end zone with Boyd, where he kind of just walked in. And obviously Burns was, like you said, like somewhere between 8 to 10 yards, like away from the receiver. I felt like I've seen too much of that from him this year. I feel like we just need to kind of get a mix of who needs to be where. I mean, we have good cornerbacks. Obviously, Hilton's going to stay in the slot because of his speed and the nickel blitzes that they like to use him in and stuff. We have Cam Sutton, who obviously gets substituted in a lot for when one of our cornerbacks is tired and stuff, or when Burns gets beat on a play. But I feel like Sutton just he has some of the same issues that Burns has. So I feel like just even bringing Brian Allen in, obviously they took him off the practice squad. I feel like bringing him in could change something up, could shake something up. Brian Allen has been pretty reliable in the past. Hasn't really blown too many huge plays. Has been a good corner. I wouldn't say like outstanding or great, but he hasn't blown a lot of coverages. Isn't super aggressive. Is gonna get burnt, trying to deflect a ball or intercept a ball. But I feel like needs to be some change in there to kind of just shake things up. Hayden's doing a great job, but if only one side of the field is getting covered, great, then you leave that whole other side wide open, and safeties can't always cover Burns' ass.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I just look at it as simple as it cannot be any worse than Artie Burns. I think it's safe to call him a bust at this point. They've given him as much time as they can. I mean, Tomlin's still going to use him. Who am I kidding? But I would like to see Allen in there. They're working the 2-man with him and Sutton. Like, throw Allen in there too. See what he can do. Like I said, it cannot be any worse than Artie Burns.
No, I mean they have Sensabaugh, they have Sutton, they have Burns, Hayden, and Brian Allen. So I feel Sensabaugh really hasn't. They've tried to substitute him in a couple of times, kind of done the same thing that Burns has done. So don't really feel like that's the solution to the problem. But I feel like just some changes and stuff. Obviously, leaving Hilton where he's at, he's kind of somebody that's solidified and stayed there because he can stay with all the slot receivers and stuff. So we'll see.
Yeah, we shall. You got anything else regarding Pitt Cincy? Can we move on?
Nope, nothing regarding that. I just kind of what's next for Cincy. I feel they need to definitely get a win going forward if they want to kind of continue with the division race. And I feel like they'll come out with a little bit of fire under their ass, especially after this loss to Pitt that they so thought that they were going to get pretty easily and thought that they were definitely the better team.
Yeah, I would expect the same thing. I definitely think they're a better team this year than they have been in years past. Marvin Lewis, I just don't see how they keep him around if they don't get a playoff win, especially this year. So I think the team likes him. They're playing for him. They want to win, but they got to get past this hump that is the Pittsburgh Steelers before we talk about them being legitimate.
Completely agree. All right, so we're gonna flip over into out of the Homer game. We're gonna go towards. I have a choice of game that I wanted to talk about. Marty has a game he wants to talk about, and then we're just gonna talk about a couple of the games that surprised us this week. So I'll kind of let you take it away.
Okay. Well, my game of choice, this was one of my picks for this past week, was the Rams versus Denver in Denver. I had the Rams winning 45-21. I anticipated a blowout. I was way off. Final score of that game was 23-20. LA. It was not an easy game for them. I didn't get a chance to watch a ton of this game, despite it actually being on TV. I was kind of shocked that it was. But, excuse me. This was a tough game for LA. It really challenged them in a lot of aspects. But at the end of the day, Todd Gurley, who's the big talking point for this game for me, he absolutely took over. In my opinion, he won this game for them on the ground. They had virtually really no passing game with Goff this week, and then Cooper Kupp, he went down. To my knowledge, I think he's week to week, so that's actually somewhat of a loss for them. They still have Brendan Cooks and Robert Woods, as well as Gurley from the backfield, despite only racking up 2 receptions this week. But like I said, he got it done on the ground for them. But yeah, this was definitely a tough one for LA. I think after this, they keep rolling. Let me pull up their schedule here really quick. Insert Jeopardy music.
I definitely feel like he is kind of dominating the run game in the NFL this year. I mean, he did it last year, but he's just he's solidifying his spot. Obviously, Denver, their rush defense is awful. They have 174 yards against averaged a game, which I believe is actually one of the worst in the league, if not the worst. But having that kind of stats, having those kind of stats, and trying to be able to recover with it when your offense is super high powered is kind of tough. So for this game to be as close as it was, it really kind of surprised me and took me back.
Yeah, I think, we'll get back to the schedule here. For the Rams, just looking forward, next 3 weeks they're at San Fran, Green Bay, and New Orleans. The Green Bay and New Orleans games are going to be pretty interesting for them. I could definitely see them racking up a loss there. We'll have to see as we go forward. But getting back to the game itself, I think what Denver, one of their biggest issues is, and we can cover this when we talk about the Thursday night matchup as well, they have no run game. They're trying to work a tandem with Lindsey and Freeman, and it is just not working at all. I think it's one of those situations. Not a coach, not an expert. I think you need to decide on which one of them is going to get the bulk of the work and go from there. I don't think either of them have been able to really gain any type of traction on the ground because there's no consistent carries to them. This week, we had Lindsey had 4 carries, Freeman had 9. They combined for 40 yards on the ground. So I think going forward, like I said, if I was the coach, I would pick one of them to give the bulk of the work to and see what happens. It can't hurt. As for the passing game, I think Keenum looked great. He hasn't looked his best every game there since coming to Denver, but we'll have to see. He did have a pretty solid game with 322 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. I believe the pick was actually later in the game. So that may have cost them. I didn't see the end of the game, like I said. But this for me, this was, like I said, a big one for LA. It was a big test. They were able to win this close game when they couldn't really get much offense going other than on the ground, and it shows that if need be, Gurley can win them a game like he did this week.
Yeah, and I feel like they definitely need to just kind of make him the focal point of the offense like they already have.
Mm-hmm.
But just kind of stick with that going forward because it's working. And nobody really has an answer for him yet. He has, almost 700 yards rushing. So I feel definitely you need to just kind of stick with him and hope that nobody really figures him out. If not, I mean, obviously you have Robert Woods and Brendan Cooks on the outside, so not too worried there. And also, Gurley can catch out of the backfield, so not a big issue there. They're looking pretty unstoppable.
Yeah, no, and then with him, I mean, they have a pretty lethal weapon. So we'll see. We'll see if anybody can make any type of adjustment, but I don't see it happening. I see probably Green Bay is going to be their toughest test coming up here in 2 weeks. They face them. I think they're going to blow out San Fran, but who knows? San Fran gave Green Bay a run for their money last night. Anything's possible, but we'll just have to see going forward.
Yep. My choice for this week was Chicago Miami, which was a huge game to kind of figure out the identities for both these teams. Chicago obviously going in there 3-1 and their defense looking absolutely unstoppable. and Miami trying to answer a couple questions about their potential and their offense and stuff this week after losing two. After you come out of the gate 3-0, then they lost two straight. Obviously, the last week being the Patriots. Always take that with a grain of salt, but I felt this game was really a shocker, and I mean, it was a nail biter toward the end. I felt that kind of Chicago, their defense was a little bit exposed this game. I just feel as if that they didn't really look like they've looked in previous weeks. Khalil Mack obviously is still pretty dominant, but Miami was able to kind of figure out what to do against this defense. And I think going forward, other teams that are playing the Bears need to look at the tape and kind of just study what the Dolphins did against the Bears. I mean, they had 161 rush yards against the Bears. So that's obviously huge because they've been pretty locked down on the run, and they also had 380 yards through the air, which is huge once you think about that Ryan Tannehill was not playing and it was Brock Osweiler. So that kind of shows a lot. Obviously, that overtime was controversial and stuff, but it managed to seal the deal, close it up with a field goal. And I think a lot of questions were answered for Miami, and a lot of questions were raised for Chicago as if they were like, are they an elite contender? I guess we'll just have to see going forward in these next couple of weeks.
Yeah, this is definitely big for Miami, especially with staying in the division. Brock Osweiler coming in, showing he can still get it done. How much, I mean, with you're talking about Chicago's defense being exposed. Obviously, they were anticipating Tannehill playing earlier in the week, and I'm sure the Dolphins didn't change too much up. Do you think that played any part? Maybe Brock showed them some different looks, stuff like that. Do you think any of that came into play, or it was just a case of the Dolphins being ready for what Chicago had to offer on defense?
I think it was more so the Dolphins being a little bit more prepared than Chicago thought they would be. Osweiler kind of has a pretty similar style to Tannehill. They're not statue quarterbacks, but they're also not super mobile. I mean, they can get out of the pocket and stuff when they need to, but they're obviously not very fast. But they kind of play the same style, like the short to medium passes kind of keep the longer passes limited. They did a couple of those medium passes that went for big gains through Albert Wilson this week, which definitely helped their case there. And to be able to rely on the run game was huge for them because their run game's pretty like up in the air. It could go real good one week and real bad another week. So I kind of just felt like they kind of figured the formula out for the Bears as compared to other teams that have played the Bears and haven't really understood like what they do on defense and stuff. It's just so hard when the Chicago Bears have such a tricky pass rush like they do. It's crucial for teams to be able to get the ball out real quick, and I think Miami definitely did that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how teams adjust here in the coming weeks, based off of what Miami was able to do against Chicago. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, like I said, study the tape, study the tape, study the tape, guys. It's how you beat the Bears.
Yep, it's that simple. All right. Next up, guys, we have we're each going to do a game, an outcome of a game that surprised us. I'll start first here. So, there's another pick I had this week, Cleveland and the Chargers. I originally had Cleveland winning this one in a bit of a shootout, 34-30. And once again, that did not happen. It went complete opposite. They got blown out of the water by LA. A couple talking points. The main talking point from this game is the Browns' defense. A defense that was pitted to be pretty good and was showing that they were pretty good through the first few weeks of the season. They had no answer whatsoever for the Chargers this week, and to me that raises a lot of questions. Whether maybe they just had an off week, giving up, especially on the ground. They're known for stopping the run. They gave up 246 yards on the ground this week, which is really concerning. Through the air, not so much. Only, 203 yards through the air. But we're going to have to see how they bounce back. I think it may have just been an off week for them. Maybe they weren't prepared. But going forward, we will have to see with that. Baker didn't look too good this week as well. As I said last week, I'm a bit of a Baker fan. He didn't seem to be with it this week. 22 for 46, not that great, 230 yards. He threw 2 picks as well. They virtually had no air game, as well as no run game. Everything all around for the Browns this week was just an absolute mess. I would absolutely bet, though, that we got 2 weeks till they're here in Pittsburgh. I bet they turn things around, and they're going to want that one. So I expect a hungry Browns team to come in here and put up a good fight against the Steelers. As for the Chargers, this game turned out to be pretty important for them in terms of standings, especially with Kansas City losing. They're right there with Kansas City now, and they still have 2 games to go against Kansas City down the road. So this was definitely a big one for them to win, to maintain pace and not fall down there with Denver. So we will see what they're able to do going forward, but it definitely makes the first Kansas City matchup quite intriguing, with Kansas City losing this past Sunday. So we'll have to see, like I said.
Yeah, I think I might have to disagree with you a little bit in regards to just the Cleveland's defense. Yeah, they looked pretty good coming, off the 2 wins they've had this season and stuff, and they're looking at that even record and stuff, and obviously got ruined this week. But I feel like this was the first time that they actually matched up against a really good, talented offense. Melvin Gordon, you have Keenan Allen, Phillip Rivers, you have Eckler, you have just a bunch of weapons out of the offense, and for the Chargers just to kind of just spread it out and use that all across the board. Gordon had 3 touchdowns himself, over 150 rush yards, and they threw two of their passes that they threw were over 50 yards to Williams in the end zone. So they didn't really need much of a pass game, because Phillip Rivers kind of just long bombed it into the end zone, and that was it. They didn't need much of a drive to kind of just work down the field. I feel like this is their first really heavy matchup through a good offense, and they kind of got exposed. So I think going forward they need to kind of fill the issues that they saw with this game, and I think Baker Mayfield is kind of showing that maybe he's not as great as everybody thinks he is. He has more interceptions than touchdowns. He does know how to control a game, but is that enough if you're not helping your team? You might be able to control a game, but you also need to contribute to your team scoring. So we'll see going forward how both these teams adjust, but I definitely think Cleveland's going to be very hungry going into Pittsburgh week 8.
Now, what do you think it's going to take for them to, for the Browns to bench Baker? Think he has to have another 1 touchdown, 2-3 interception game to give Tyrod another look? Or you think they're going to stick with him?
I think they'll stick with him for another week or 2, even if he has 2 bad weeks here. I think going into 3rd week, if he's looking sloppy again, then we're gonna have to put the veteran in, just because Taylor doesn't turn over the ball. He's notorious for not fumbling, not throwing many picks every year. Very smart with the ball. Obviously doesn't put up a huge stat line, but he knows how to not give the other team the ball. And if his defense manages to do okay, then obviously the formula there for Cleveland will be hopefully turning it around and getting closer to some wins and stuff. So we'll see. My game that surprised me this week was Buffalo and Houston. Obviously, both these teams are kind of wild cards. They aren't really particularly super highly offensive, super highly defensive. They can kind of just beat whatever team. Obviously, the Bills beating the Vikings and the Titans. Texans just, all completely being a wild card. I can't figure them out yet this year. Buffalo ends up, choking kind of towards the end there, and allows for Houston to close out with a win. I had Buffalo winning this game. Obviously, it was going to be a shootout, low-scoring shootout, but it was going to be a shootout, just kind of back and forth defensively wise. And that's exactly what it was. There was 12 total down through the Bills and 15 total first downs for the Texans. Mind you, only 4 first downs through the ground and 3 first downs through the ground for the Texans. So it was mainly through the air, and neither team was super successful through the air there anyways. So I think it kind of just showed that whoever had that last jump was kind of going to get on top. McCoy came out with McCoy came out with 73 yards this week, and that was huge. Hopefully, it just continues to turn over for him going forward. I averaged a little bit more than 4.5 yards to carry. So I think they need to utilize that going forward. Josh Allen, hopefully, he'll be back next week because I think he's definitely their answer and not Peterman. Peterman threw 2 picks in 2 of his attempts. It's just Peterman of last year who threw 4 interceptions. I can't remember if it was the first quarter or the first half, but
it was the first quarter. It was terrible.
Yeah. So I think going forward, they definitely need Josh Allen back for them to be back into stature. And Houston needs to figure out their offensive identity because scoring 20 points against a team is not going to get you many wins in the league. Their defense is good, but they need more offensive power.
Yeah, it's a wonder to me what's going on with Watson because this team could easily be putting up 30, 35 points a game with the offense that they have, and he just has not been himself since he's come back. I'm wondering if he's just getting a feel for things again. If that's the case, he better get a feel a lot quicker because we're 6 games in. He needs to wake up. But this was it was a big win for them. It was good to get this. It was a game they should have won regardless. But
was also very huge with a bunch of losses in their division this week. So they kind of climbed the. Buffalo needed a win. They kind of went down because obviously. The Patriots won and the Dolphins won, so that now they sink back down towards the bottom. So
yeah, the AFC South is a bit of a mess right now. It's anybody's game. So
yeah, especially with that shocking Titan, kind of completely commanding win from the Ravens, 11 sacks against the Titans. I think they have a lot to work out there. So AFC South totally a toss up.
Yeah.
Good, sorry.
No, you're good. I was just gonna say regarding that Titans game. I believe I read that Mariota had 10 completions to getting sacked 11 times. So
yeah, so I think you're definitely gonna run into some blue pass. That goes for any team.
Absolutely.
We're gonna transition into the league news. So this is kind of just a segment where we're talking about what's going on in the NFL and what has happened in the past week. One of our main talking points is Bell. Obviously, we've covered him, so we're just going to breeze on past him. I'm sure you guys are sick of hearing about the Bell drama and issues.
We're sick of hearing it too, just so you all know.
We most definitely are. One thing that caught my eye this week was the Kenyan Drake fumble. So this was in overtime. He was at the 1 yard line, and he managed to fumble at the 1 yard line, and obviously the Bears recovered, didn't do anything with it. The Dolphins marched back down the field with help from a couple of Kenyan Drake's catches in the backfield, and Jason Sanders wins the game with a field goal. Obviously redeems Kenyan Drake, but you can imagine how awful that would have been to fumble at the 1 yard line, and then he would have lost through that. Kenyan Drake was on his knees on the sideline from when that happened until they won. So I guess it kind of goes to show that football players are humans too. Yeah,
no, that would have definitely been tough to swallow had they not won that game with being so close and that happening. But they battled back. The Dolphins definitely, just as a whole, man, they battled this week. They earned this one for sure.
Yeah, this was definitely one for the trenches. Completely earned the win. I think they definitely fought a little bit harder than the Bears, and in the end, they got the win because of it. And Jason Sanders' foot, obviously, which hopefully Kenyan Drake took him out to dinner or something after that. He definitely saved his ass.
Absolutely did. All right, moving on here. Next thing we have to talk about is what happened in Dallas, and with that, we are going to take it over to Jalen Ramsey, guys.
Ass beat.
How much of a shock is it that this defense comes out and gets their ass beat, considering the talent you guys have?
I don't know, man.
When you guys have played together a lot as a secondary, how do you kind of explain some of the blown assignments that you guys had early in this game?
That was fun.
Coach said that he felt like it wasn't an effort issue, it was a miscommunication issue. Would you agree with that?
I don't know.
Jalen, what challenge did Cole Beasley pose today?
I don't know.
defense usually plays with a lot of swagger and confidence. What needs to happen to kind of get you guys mojo
I don't
back?
know.
You got what it takes in this room to kind of regroup and get back on track.
Yeah, we'll see.
Is this still the best defense in the NFL, Jalen? Is this still the best defense in the NFL?
We ain't playing like it.
There's a time in 2016 you thought the Cowboys would take you instead of Zeke. Did you have a chance to talk to
It
Zeke
don't
today?
matter.
How big is this one coming up with Houston at home division game?
It's the next one.
Is your guys' pride wounded a little bit
I
today?
don't know.
You personally, I mean, have you experienced a loss like this?
I don't remember.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Needless to say, Jalen doesn't have the answer, so that's why we're here to answer that question for you. What the hell did happen in Dallas? Because I was pretty shocked by this game.
I think everybody was a little shocked. They tuned in or watched from the beginning. This game was a big question mark for Dallas. I think it kind of went to show, even though their defense obviously allowed 40 points from a weak Dallas squad. I think it goes to show that if you are going to let up that amount of points, that obviously your offense also has to do something, and their offense just did nothing. So I feel as if the game wouldn't be such a blow to the ego of the Jags if, they'd put up, say, 28, 30 points, but they didn't. They put up 7. Final score on that was 40-7. So I think it also boosts the ego of the Cowboys going forward. So awful and pathetic this whole season. But I still think Dak Prescott is not their answer at quarterback. He is just an average quarterback, a B- at times. But I feel like for most part, he's a C+ quarterback, and he's not going to put up a huge stat line. They need to rely on Zeke and the offensive line to just basically carry them through the game.
Yeah, and I mean that's more or less what they did in this. Granted, he had 2 touchdowns, but the ground game was definitely there for them. I still believe they need another wide receiver as well. Cole Beasley did have the 2 touchdowns from Dak, but they definitely need something better.
Yeah, he doesn't really have anybody to throw there. I think that definitely needs to change. Obviously, he 183 on that game for him through the air with 2 touchdowns. I mean, it got the win, but it's not much. In regards to what happened to the Jaguars defense on there, I think maybe if you look at their stats, they are the bottom 10 of the league for turnovers, for points allowed per game against average, and then they're also through the ground. Their rush defense is bottom 10. So I think the dominant Jaguars defense of last year is maybe not so much the same this year.
Yeah, definitely not. And that combined with a normal, subpar Blake Bortles is going to lead to disaster, like we saw this week. I definitely think. I mean, more so, I would take Dak over Blake Bortles any day of the week. So, I think them just talking about him for a little bit, them making that re-sign, showing confidence in him after a pretty successful playoff run. I think that was a big mistake because we're seeing what he's really made of here in the first couple weeks of the season, despite only being 3-3.
Yeah. I definitely think he's their answer. Another person to highlight this week was Tyreek Hill, who definitely had a week. 7 receptions, 142 yards, and 3 touchdowns. This would be more of a big deal if the Chiefs had won, but they didn't. They lost, so I don't think this is getting talked about a whole bunch. But he played a crucial role in keeping them in the game. He only had 7 catches, but all his catches were, big catches. He had 3 of their scores. So I think because they lost, he kind of just got tossed to the side, and his importance in that game got tossed to the side. But he was definitely important.
Yeah, more people are so talking about the criminal charges he's trying to press against the fan that threw beer in his face rather than his stat line. Rightfully so. That was a bit ridiculous. From what I've heard, that fan has been banned, and charges are being pursued by Tyreek Hill still. So.
Yeah, so we'll have to see what comes of that, and we'll have fantasy Tyreek. If his stat line continues, I will not bench him this week.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. That was a big mistake.
Missed out on 40 points there. So going forward, also speaking of trying to decide fantasy and who we should start and stuff, Amari Cooper, he's on the trade block. Somebody that, obviously was top of the league a couple of years ago, and nobody thought that he would be coming down. Kind of proven to be almost like a bust. Not many yards this season. Not getting very many looks. Also, I think it's kind of just that Raiders team, and he kind of looked the same last year. After that, 2015 season, he just kind of trailed off and wasn't looking too great going forward.
Yeah, they seem to just completely be blowing things up there in Oakland right before they make the move to Vegas, which I think is a big mistake. But Cooper definitely, he's been nowhere to be found. They're talking about wanting a first-round pick for him, which is kind of a head-scratcher considering they gave up Khalil Mack for pennies. So we'll just have to see what happens. I don't think Cooper, at least at this point from what he's shown, is worth a first-round pick. Maybe third, second. But I would not be giving away a first-rounder for Amari Cooper
I would say,
at this juncture.
I would say tops a second-round pick for Cooper. But I also think that goes into, I don't really think the Raiders wanted to pay Khalil Mack. So I think also that kind of goes into the factoring of Cooper getting traded. I don't really think they want to pay him going forward, with his next contract. So they don't really have the money after giving Gruden the big giant contract that they can't really get out of. I think they're kind of just trying to fire sale the team. And since they're not making enough money on the team, they don't have enough money to pay these people. And I think that was the main reason that Mack had all the issues there and was obviously traded away for nothing. And Cooper's on the trade block.
It's a wonder if they're trying to blow things up there just in anticipation for the move to Vegas and things kind of even out once they get there.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to wait and see. But after this year, we shall see.
Yep. Alrighty, what else? I think that's pretty much it. That covers league news this week. We're going to move on to the Thursday night matchup preview. We have the Denver Broncos sitting at 2-4, going up against the Arizona Cardinals at 1-5. This is a bit of a sleeper game. It's a typical Thursday nighter, but there's a few things we can talk about here.
I think maybe just because both these teams are not looking so hot out of the gate, that this might be a little bit of a shootout. Strictly just because the Broncos' run game is absolute garbage, their run game and their rush defense is absolute garbage, and the Cardinals' rush game has been complete trash this year. Maybe it kind of steps up. Speaking of David Johnson, I think might be able to step up and put up a nice little stat line against the Broncos D. I just believe he's been, kind of just set to the back burners because they've been trailing so quickly this season. So I think this game gives him an opportunity to kind of step up.
Yeah, for me, the intrigue for this game comes with the running games. I touched on Royce Freeman and Phillip Lindsay for Denver being a tandem there. It intrigues me to see which running game is able to step up, if either of them is able to step up in this game. Like I said, I would like to see one definitive back for the Broncos be out there. I doubt that's going to happen this week, but there's definitely room. Somebody's got to do something. Either that or they're both going to stink to join up again. So we'll just have to wait and see. As for the Cardinals, with all this going on, being 1-5, just looking at some of their numbers, what sticks out to me is Larry Fitzgerald. He's basically done nothing this year, and I credit that more so to the quarterback than him. But I feel for Larry, man. He's gonna end up probably finishing his career without a chance to even get a ring here with how bad this team is doing.
Yeah, no, I feel for him because he's been down with the Cardinals' struggles. Obviously went to the Super Bowl with them a while back, but ever since then hasn't really seen a taste of like victory and any good playoff runs and stuff. So I feel for him. I also think the quarterback situation imploding in Arizona doesn't really help Fitzgerald's case. So I think that's why he's not really putting up any numbers. Then again, nobody in their offense is really putting up any numbers. So I think that kind of attributes to a very lackluster offense in both teams, the Broncos and the Cardinals.
Yeah, I think with the quarterback situation, they made a huge mistake giving Bradford the first team reps through camp and whatnot. I'm not exactly sure why or what they even saw in him. I think they could be a little bit better off at this point if you had Rosen getting all the first team reps throughout camp. I'm not saying they would be 6-0, but I think that definitely would have done a little bit more rather than him still working his way into the system, more or less. But they screwed that up, so we're past that. It's just a matter of him figuring it out at this point on his own.
Yeah, I feel like they kind of threw him to the wolves with that. So we'll see going forward how good he can look without, getting all the main reps through preseason and such. I feel as if Bradford's definitely not the answer. He hasn't really been the answer anywhere. Besides the Vikings for a little bit, and then somebody else stepped up and looked better than him anyways. So he's kind of just been a bouncer on teams. And I feel he's more suited as backup than a starter anywhere. I just don't think he has the poise in games or the knowledge to be able to step up and do what he needs to do in order to help his team be successful this season.
Yeah, he's definitely not a starting caliber type of quarterback. A very suitable backup, but not a starter for sure. Final score in this game, what are you thinking? You said shootout, so give me some numbers here.
I'm going to say not super high scoring shootout, but I'm going to say it's going to end up 31-27 the Broncos. Simply just because I feel as if their pass defense will hold up, and I don't know if the Cardinals will be able to get their run game going. So I feel as if because of how close the game was between the Rams, that they have a little bit better chance towards the Cardinals. So I say 31-27 Broncos over the Cardinals, simply because I feel the Broncos have it a little bit more figured out than the Cardinals.
Yeah, I also score's a little different, but I have the Broncos winning 24-17. I'm going to say their defense is going to show up. Granted, it's going to show up against a pretty bad offensive team. I see the Broncos getting something going on the ground, whether it's with a tandem or they decide to just put one or the other out there. The Cardinals are going to get some good looks through the air. I think we see Rosen improve a little bit, maybe connect with Fitzgerald finally, like he needs to be doing. But I don't see them coming out on top. Their woes are going to continue, especially on the ground, and they'll be working from behind for a majority of this game, so they won't even really have a chance to work from the ground.
Yeah. Yep. The Cardinals surprise us and shock us, and end up winning this game, but you never know with that. The rush defenses on this, though, I feel as if could kind of go either way, just because of how the Broncos rush defense is, which is crazy because of how good their pass rush is. Obviously, with the front seven that they have there. So, see going forward. I'm really curious to see if David Johnson steps up, and I kind of want him to, just because he's been revered as one of the top 5 running backs in the league, and he just has not showed it this year.
Yeah. I mean, I think like you were talking about, they've been playing from behind a lot, but at the same time, with 92 carries, he's only got 297 yards on the ground, averaging 3.2. So I mean, he's getting his carries, but I think it would be beneficial if they're not playing from behind, just to get more meaningful carries, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I definitely. They need to kind of just come out of the gate strong and not have to be playing catch up all game. I feel offensive line is not super strong in Arizona, so that could also contribute to it. But I think that Johnson also kind of has a duty to step up and help his team really kind of just get get a foot in the door the first quarter there, and maybe score on the first drive, kind of set the tone. They just need something to switch up in Arizona, or else it's gonna look like 6 for the Cardinals.
Yeah. We'll have to see when Friday comes around. But I think that's just about going to do it for the preview show this week.
Yep.
Sorry, the recap. My bad.
Yeah. Get it straight, okay. And I agreed with you too. So we will be back Friday, and we'll be talking of obviously what happened this Thursday night game, and we will be previewing all the matchups coming forward this upcoming weekend. Couple good games in store. Obviously the homers have the bye week, so a little bit depressing for us. So
not much to talk about, but we'll get through.
Yeah, not much to talk about, but there is a whole besides us. So I guess we'll have a little bit to talk about, but curious to see how this Thursday night matchup ends up.
Yeah, it could be a good one, or it could be a sleeper, like most Thursday night matchups like this are. So we'll have to wait and see. I'm looking forward to it, though. I'll be watching it.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I'm not catching a nap halfway through this game, but you never know. Thursday nights have kind of been lately, so we shall see.
Alrighty, guys. Well, thank you as always for listening to us yak. We will be back on Friday. Enjoy your week.
Yep, everybody enjoy your week. Enjoy, mediocre game Thursday, and enjoy the good couple games that are coming up this weekend. So we will be back Friday, and thanks for listening to us yak.
See you guys Friday. Later.
See ya.